Hi everyone. To get ready for your IAs, I noticed that there's a few things that a lot of you struggled with on prior quizzes or tests. So I'm going to quickly do an example for finding slope from a graph, solving a linear equation, and when the directions say evaluate a function, I realize that many of you don't understand what to do. You know the process. You don't understand what they're asking. So we're going to look at each of those. Let's start with finding the slope of a line from a graph. So if you're given the graph and you need the slope for whatever reason, they're asking you for the slope or they're asking you to write the equation of the line, either way, or you're using it for something else. If you need the slope, you need to find two good points that you can tell what the ordered pair is. Sometimes the x and y intercept will work well. Other times it'll be a point like this that very clearly is at the point 4, -2. So get your 2 points. I like this one here also. It is 0, -5. Be careful that you read your scale properly. And then you use your slope formula, and your slope formula is on your formula sheet. It tells you to subtract your y's, or find the difference or change in the y's, and put that over the change or difference in the x's. So you're subtracting the 2 y's, and then on the bottom you'll subtract the 2 x's. Let's start with the y's. Be careful with your negatives. I have -2 minus -5. I'm going to stick that in parentheses so I don't lose my negatives. Notice I'm just looking at my y's right now. That goes on top, and on the bottom you start with the same ordered pair you started with for the numerator here. So 4 minus 0. So if you start with this ordered pair on top of the fraction, you have to start with this same ordered pair on the bottom. If you're someone that makes sign errors normally, or you struggle with adding and subtracting when there's negatives involved, just use the calculator. You get 3 on top and 4 on the bottom, and that is your slope, or your m. For this graph, just to use another example, this point looks like it works well. It's 3, 0. Sorry, 0, 3. Look at me making a mistake already. Zero, 3. The x value goes first, then the y value. And I need another point that's a good. This one looks fine, except that it would be 1/2. I don't want to work with fractions. I like this one here. It's going exactly through. It is the point 1, 1. All right, subtract your y's, so 3 minus 1, over, subtract your x's, starting with the same ordered pair you did for the top there, so 0 minus 1. Now you might be tempted to do 1 minus 0, but whatever ordered pair you start with on the top, you have to start with the same ordered pair on the bottom. 2 over -1 simplifies to simply -2, and that is your slope. So this is all about counting, rise over run. You can also count up 1, 2, left 1. Watch your scale. Same thing. Up 2 is a +2. Left 1 is -1. You can do the same thing here. Count. Up 1, 2, 3 for rise. Right 1, 2, 3, 4 for run. 3 over 4. Rise over run. That is your slope formula. You can use the formula or simply count. All right, for this problem, if you're told that y is 12 and they ask you to find what x is. Now, it's not usually worded this simply at this stage of the game. You are in 9th grade algebra. So be careful about what is being asked. Read your problems carefully, but often they'll give you one value. You'll plug it in where they tell you it goes. They said y is 12, and then you have to find the value of the missing variable. To do that, you've got to be good at solving linear equations, and some of you seem to have struggled with that in middle school. So to do this, you want to get the variable, the x, by itself. You want to get rid of everything else on this side of the equation. So start from the thing farthest away from it. I see a 9, it's being added. The opposite of addition is subtraction. So I'm going to subtract 9, but what I do to one side of the equation, I have to do to the other side. 12 plus negative 9 or minus 9 gives me 3. I still have my negative 4x here. I'm keeping my eye on it, but positive 9 and negative 9, when I add them together, is 0. And so I get to cross it out because plus 0 doesn't change anything. Now you still keep your eye on the ball. I want x by itself. So you say, what's happening to the x? Well, the x is being multiplied by a negative 4. Anytime there's a number directly in front of a variable, a letter, it is being multiplied. What's the opposite of multiplication? Division. If I divide negative 4 by negative 4, it equals 1, and 1x is just x. So it works out. It gets the x alone. But what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. Now, you're allowed to leave this fraction here. If it could be simplified, you should. And certainly if they ask you for a decimal, you should write it. But otherwise, we now know what x equals. Negative 3/4. Sometimes they don't give you values for the variables. They just ask you to rearrange. Solve for p means get the p by itself. So if you need to do that for one reason or another, and again, the problem isn't usually worded like this, but you will have times where you need one letter by itself to be able to move forward. So to do that, you follow the same rules we just did on the last problem. You just won't be able to combine as much because a lot of it isn't numbers. So I want the p by itself. I'm starting with this 2m. To get rid of it, I can subtract 2m. And what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. Notice that I didn't line it up under the 10. And the reason is because those aren't like terms. I can't combine them. Don't lose your negative. Anytime there's a negative in front of a number, it travels with it. And I have 10 minus 2m. I can't combine those. They don't both have an m, so they are not like terms. My goal was to get the p by itself. I'm almost there. I need to get rid of the negative 3. It's being multiplied to the p, so dividing it, negative 3 over negative 3 is 1. 1p is just p. But I have to do it to everything. All of it. Every term. When I do that, it looks messy, but p is by itself. I can put my negative out here. I have negative 10/3. Keep those fractions. Negative over negative is positive, so I'm going to write plus. And you can write this a little neater by writing 2/3 m. And now p is by itself, and you have an equation that you could use for other purposes. I noticed on the last test that a lot of you didn't know what to do. You were messaging me. It said evaluate the function, and it wasn't multiple choice. You just had to do it. And a lot of you, surprising number, didn't understand the question. So if during the test I had been able to say to you, hey, just make x -3, plug it in, almost all of you would have then known, oh, okay. Look at f of x. Instead of x, there is a -3 in those parentheses. It is literally telling you to replace the x with a -3. Everywhere you see an x, you put a -3. This side of the problem is notation. It is saying for the function f, when x is -3, the answer is, and then you're taking this and you're putting it in your calculator. That's all you have to do with that. So I'm not sure, actually, I didn't do it ahead of time. I don't know what that is when you put it in the calculator, but I'll just make an arrow. Put this in the calculator. Just the way it is, be careful, parentheses, the negative in the exponent there. Use the Desmos calculator to get an answer. You are not typing in this f of -3 part. You are only typing in what I circled here and get a number answer, and then that's your final answer. Evaluate means when x or whatever variable they use is this number, what's your answer? That's what they're asking you to do. All right, I hope this helps. Good luck on your IA.